If the only way to talk to the gods was through death, would you die? For the Sumerians, this wasn't just a question. It was their life philosophy. They were so devoted to their gods that they considered it an honor to journey to the afterlife with their loved ones. This belief was so powerful, it even influenced modern religions. Tonight, I'm telling you the most shocking story from 5,000 years ago, a story where 77 people voluntarily died, sacrificing their lives for love. These people weren't murdered or tortured. On the contrary, they considered this death the greatest honor. And this ritual was so perfect that modern science still can't figure out exactly how it was done. The 77 bodies found in Queen Puabi's tomb aren't just an archaeological discovery. They're the deepest proof of humanity's relationship with the gods. This is the story of a civilization that believed death wasn't an end, but a new beginning. And I guarantee you, after this story, you'll never look at death and love the same way again. If you love these kinds of deep historical stories, don't forget to subscribe because this is just the beginning. And tell me in the comments, do you think dying for the gods is courage or madness? Sumerian gods were totally different from other civilizations' gods. They weren't just feared beings, they were loved and respected family members. This difference formed the foundation of Sumerian religion and explains the origins of human sacrifice rituals. Indal, Enki, Inanna, Marduk. These names weren't just god names for the Sumerians. They were real beings. Sumerians were in constant contact with their gods in daily life. When they woke up in the morning, they'd greet their gods, ask permission when going to work, and tell them about their day when returning home in the evening. This closeness was so natural that Sumerians saw their gods as family. Just like we're ready to do anything not to lose someone we love, they were ready to give their lives to be with their gods forever. The story of goddess Inanna perfectly examples this situation. Inanna was the goddess of love and war, but she also had the most human emotions. She could get angry, happy, sad, even jealous. This human side was why Sumerians felt so close to her. In Sumerian temples, daily meals were prepared for the gods. These meals weren't symbolic, they really believed the gods would eat them. God statues were regularly washed, dressed, even taken for walks. These rituals proved the belief that gods were living beings, but most importantly, Sumerians believed their gods truly loved them. This mutual love was strong enough to overcome even death. This belief formed the foundation of human sacrifice rituals. In Sumerian texts, it clearly states that gods saw humans as their children. Just like parents protect their children, gods protected the Sumerian people. And just like children are ready to do anything for their parents, Sumerians showed the same sacrifice for their gods. In 1922, when archaeologist Leonard Woolley was excavating in the city of Urel, he made one of the most surprising discoveries in human history. Queen Puabi's tomb wasn't just filled with gold and jewels, it also contained 77 human skeletons. But the special thing about these skeletons was that they were all found in perfect order, with no signs of violence. Queen Puabi lived around 2450 BC and was a Sumerian queen. She wasn't just a ruler, but also the earthly representative of goddess Inanna. This role made her different from ordinary people. She was a sacred being who served as a bridge between gods and humans. During the tomb's discovery, archaeologists were shocked. 77 people, men, women, young, old, all positioned around the queen as if they were sleeping. They wore the finest clothes, held musical instruments and art pieces. None showed signs of blows, cuts, or battle wounds. Most surprising were these people's facial expressions. According to modern medical examinations, these people died without fear or pain. On the contrary, their faces showed peace and happiness, as if for them this death was the greatest gift. Archaeological evidence shows these 77 people were the queen's inner circle: palace musicians, servants, guards, advisors, and even friends. These weren't forcibly taken slaves, but people who loved the queen and were loved by her. How the ritual took place can be inferred from evidence found in the tomb. First, the queen was buried with a great ceremony. Then, 77 people entered the tomb chamber. They wore their finest clothes, with music, as if going to a wedding ceremony. The golden cups and vessels found in the tomb show that a special drink was prepared. What this drink was isn't exactly known, but it was most likely a special mixture made from opium or other narcotic plants. This drink provided a painless death. The most touching detail was the musicians' positions. They held their instruments in their hands, as if they had been making music until their last breath. This showed that even while going to death, they were trying to make their queen happy. The female servants wore their most beautiful jewelry, decorated their hair with golden ribbons. The male guards took their honor swords with them, ready to fulfill their final duty. The common feature of these 77 people was that they were all volunteers. There are no records of forced human sacrifice in Sumerian laws. On the contrary, participating in this ritual was the greatest honor, and you had to be specially chosen to be worthy of this honor. Sumerian human sacrifice rituals weren't random, savage acts. These were sacred ceremonies based on deep religious beliefs, with every detail carefully planned. Each stage of this ritual represented a different dimension of communication with the gods. Preparation phase. The ritual began weeks before the queen or king's death. People to be sacrificed were selected with special criteria. These people had to have genuine love for the queen and have worked faithfully in her service. No one was forcibly included in this ritual. The chosen people went through a special preparation process before the ritual. During this process, they were informed about life after death and taught how they would serve their queen in the world of gods. This training wasn't done to frighten them, but to excite them. Purification ceremony. Before the ritual day, all participants went through special purification ceremonies. Not just physical cleansing, but spiritual purification was also done. They would pray in temples for days, fast, and prepare to communicate with the gods. Last Supper. On the ritual day, a final meal ceremony was held with the queen. At this meal, favorite foods were served. Memories were shared with musical accompaniment. This wasn't a farewell dinner, but a celebration of transition to new life. Descent to the tomb. After the queen's burial ceremony, 77 people descended into the tomb chamber. This descent wasn't an ordinary movement. It symbolized the transition to the world of gods. Each step was a step taken from the human world toward the divine world. In the tomb chamber, everyone took their predetermined place. Musicians with their instruments, guards with their weapons, servants with their service tools. This order showed they would continue the same duties in the other world. Preparation of the sacred drink. The specially prepared sacred drink was made from opium, mandrake, and other narcotic plants. This drink provided a painless death while also creating a spiritual journey experience. Those who drank it felt they were meeting the gods while dying. Final music. Music continued to be played until the moment of death. This music wasn't a sad farewell tune, but a welcome song to the world of gods. Ritual participants gave their last breaths with this music. Divine transition. According to Sumerian belief, during this ritual the gods were personally present in the tomb chamber. With death, souls directly passed to the world of gods and began their eternal lives with their queen. The most surprising aspect of this ritual was that no one tried to escape or stop the ritual. On the contrary, records state that people who couldn't participate in this ritual felt great sadness and considered themselves unlucky. What do you think about such detailed rituals? Tell me in the comments, do you think these people were really volunteers or was there psychological pressure? I'm curious about your thoughts. Modern science can't fully explain how the 77 people in Queen Puabi's tomb died. This mystery is still debated in the archaeology and medical world. The available evidence doesn't fully match any known method of death. Poison theory. According to the first theory, the victims were killed with a specially prepared poison. The golden cups and bowls found in the tomb were shown as evidence of this theory. However, chemical analyses performed on the skeletons showed no traces of any known poison. Plant remains found in the tomb pointed to opium, cannabis, and mandragora plants. These plants have powerful narcotic effects but aren't deadly by themselves. Moreover, The effect of these plants is slow if the person accepts death without suffering. But the most surprising finding was that all victims died at the same time. If they had died one by one, the last to die would be expected to panic and fear. But there were no movement marks in any of their positions, as if they all died at the same second. Hypnosis and psychological control. The second theory is even more surprising. Some researchers think Sumerian priests had advanced hypnosis techniques. They claim these techniques could lead people to death by their own will. In Sumerian texts, there are records of priests doing soul control. In this control, the person remained conscious but completely surrendered their will to the priests. In this state, when a death command was given, bodily functions could stop automatically. Modern medicine doesn't fully understand how mental power can affect the body. But events like voodoo deaths and nocebo effects show that psychological factors can cause real death. Carbon monoxide theory. The third theory suggests carbon monoxide gas was used in the tomb chamber. This gas is colorless and odorless, so it wouldn't be noticed. The person would gradually lose consciousness and die without pain. The structure of the tomb chamber supports this theory. The ventilation system was very limited and special brazier remains were found. These braziers could have been used to produce carbon monoxide in a controlled manner, but this theory also has unexplainable points. Carbon monoxide's effect is gradual. Not everyone dies at the same time. Moreover, people who die from this gas have their skin color change, but no such finding was found in the tomb skeletons. Supernatural explanation. The fourth theory brings a completely different dimension. Some researchers think these deaths occurred through supernatural forces. The theory that Sumerian gods really existed and personally directed this ritual. While this theory isn't scientific, witnesses in Sumerian texts support it. It's written that strange lights were seen in the tomb chamber during the ritual. Divine beings were felt. Of course, these records could be products of religious belief. Modern parallels. Similar events happen today too. In the Jonestown massacre, 900 people died by drinking poisoned drink. 39 people committed mass suicide in the Heaven's Gate cult. Similar situations occurred in Solar Temple cases. These modern examples show that powerful belief can lead people to death. Sumerian rituals could be the 5000-year-old version of this psychological power. Most likely explanation. Probably these deaths occurred as a result of combining multiple factors. Narcotic plants plus psychological preparation plus religious belief plus maybe environmental factors. This combination could have made painless and voluntary death possible. For Sumerians, death wasn't the end of life, but the beginning of a new phase. This belief system formed the foundation of human sacrifice rituals and explained why so many people voluntarily died. Kirksworld, land of the dead. In Sumerian mythology, the dead continued to live in a special world called Kirkshwar. This world wasn't just a dark and quiet place. On the contrary, there was social order there too, and everyone continued the status they had during their lifetime. In Kirkshwar, queens were still queens, musicians were still musicians, guards were still guards. So death wasn't exemption from duties, but continuation of duties in a different dimension. Importance of servants. According to Sumerian belief, servants were needed in the other world too. Queen Puabi dying with her 77 servants was to have the same comfort there. This wasn't selfishness, but continuation of order. The objects found in the tomb support this belief. Golden jewelry, musical instruments, food vessels, all were placed to be used in the other world. These objects weren't decorations, but real necessities. Close relationship with gods. Those living in the other world could communicate more closely with the gods. This was a great advantage for the living, because their deceased relatives could ask the gods for help for them. Later visits made to Queen Puabi's tomb are proof of this belief. People would come there to pray, asking the queen to intercede with the gods. This tradition continued for centuries. Immortality of the soul. Sumerians believed the soul was eternal. Even if the body died, the soul continued to live and even became stronger. This power provided not only personal but also social benefits. Honor of being sacrificed. Being a human sacrifice was the greatest honor, because these people made a direct transition to the divine world. While in normal death, the soul had to make a journey. In ritual death, it reached the destination directly. This belief was so strong that people who couldn't participate in the ritual considered themselves unlucky, because they missed the opportunity to transition to divine life with their queen. Traces in modern religions. These Sumerian beliefs deeply influenced later religions, life with Jesus in Christianity, the concept of martyrdom in Islam, mukti in Hinduism, all have Sumerian traces. Archaeological evidence. The arrangements in the tombs support these beliefs. Everyone's position shows the job they would do in the other world. Musicians were placed with their instruments, cooks with kitchen tools, guards with their weapons. Family bonds. Most touching was that families supported this ritual because they believed their relatives would have a better life in the divine world. This wasn't loss, but elevation. Human sacrifice rituals in Sumer weren't an isolated event. Throughout world history, many civilizations developed similar practices for different reasons. This comparison helps us better understand the characteristics of Sumerian rituals. Egyptian pharaohs. In ancient Egypt too, servants were sacrificed at pharaohs' deaths, but the Egyptian system was different from Sumer. In Egypt, forced sacrifice was more common, and the ritual wasn't as voluntary. Servant corpses found in Tutankhamun's tomb bore traces of violence. This shows Egyptians didn't accept death as naturally as Sumerians. Egyptian rituals were more about power display, while Sumerian rituals were love displays. Chinese emperors. In China too, great sacrifice ceremonies were held at emperors' deaths, especially the finding of thousands of terracotta soldiers in Qin Shi Huang's tomb shows they replaced real soldiers. This change reflects the change in Chinese society's view of ritual death. Maya civilization. Mayans made regular human sacrifices to please the gods, but Maya sacrifices were usually chosen from war prisoners. Voluntary sacrifice was very rare. Maya rituals were more aimed at calming divine anger. Aztec Empire. Aztecs had the most brutal human sacrifice rituals. They would sacrifice thousands of people annually. But Aztec rituals were based on completely different logic. They believed blood was needed to keep the sun moving. Celtic Druids. Celts also had human sacrifice, but in very select situations. Druids would sacrifice to prophesy about the future. These rituals were based more on seeking knowledge than love bonds like in Sumer. Viking society. Among Vikings, sacrificing slaves at important leaders' deaths was common. But in Viking rituals, the element of coercion was heavy. Ahmad ibn Fadlan's records show these rituals were done by force. Sumer's uniqueness. All these comparisons reveal the uniqueness of Sumerian rituals. In other civilizations, those sacrificed were usually slaves, prisoners, or lower-class people. But in Sumer, people from the king's queen's closest circle voluntarily sacrificed themselves. Love motivation. The most important feature that distinguished Sumerian rituals from others was love motivation. While other civilizations had fear, coercion, or self-interest, Sumer had genuine love and devotion. Modern parallels. Today too, there are people who risk death with similar motivations. Similar psychological structures are seen in kamikaze pilots, suicide bombers, those who die for martyrdom. The power of belief can overcome even death. Evolutionary explanation. Some evolutionary psychologists say group loyalty provided survival advantage. Extreme loyalty to the group's leader enabled that group to establish superiority over other groups. Sumerian rituals could be the extreme example of this evolutionary programming. Human sacrifice rituals and belief in life after death in Sumer deeply influenced all subsequent religions. This influence was so strong that we can still see Sumerian traces in modern religions. Judaism, Abraham wanting to sacrifice Isaac, comes directly from Sumerian tradition. But in Jewish religion, this ritual was stopped by God's intervention. This was the symbolic narration of transition from human sacrifice to animal sacrifice. The concept of death for gods in Sumer was transformed into life for God in Jewish religion, but the basic motivation remained the same: complete submission to divine will. Christianity. Jesus' death on the cross is the perfect example of Sumerian sacrifice rituals. Voluntary death, love motivation, sacrifice for humanity. All are continuation of Sumerian tradition. The concept of dying and resurrection with Jesus is the Christian version of Queen Puabi going to the other world with her servants. Early Christians' eagerness for martyrdom has its roots here. Islam. The concept of martyrdom in Islam is also Sumerian-rooted. Dying in the way of Allah, becoming worthy of paradise, obtaining superior position in the other world. These are all developed versions of Sumerian beliefs. The ritual of stoning Satan during Hajj comes from Sumerian ceremonies of driving away evil forces. Modern Muslims may not know this connection, but they experience the ritual with the same excitement. Hinduism. The concepts of mukti, salvation, and darshan, divine vision in Hindu belief, are continuation of the desire to unite with gods in Sumer. Rituals like jumping into the Ganges River, dying in sacred fire, are Hindu versions of Sumerian tradition. Buddhism. Accepting death in Buddhism. The desire to break out of the samsara wheel is a different expression of the search for eternal life in Sumer. Modern Buddhist suicide, self-immolation show similarity to Sumerian sacrifice psychology. Modern sects, Sumerian influences are also seen in today's new religious movements. Heaven's Gate, Solar Temple, Jonestown Myths, all have extreme loyalty to leaders and mass death rituals. Psychological continuity. From Sumer to today, the basic structure of human psychology hasn't changed. The power of belief, love, motivation, group loyalty, these still have the same effect. Modern martyrdom. Today's concepts of martyrdom are continuation of the voluntary death psychotype in Sumer. Whether religious or ideological, the motivation is the same: risking death for a loved value. The 77 skeletons emerging from Queen Puabi's tomb don't just tell us about an ancient ritual, they give universal lessons about the deepest aspects of human nature. Power of love. Sumerian rituals show that true love is stronger than death. These people made the greatest sacrifice to be with the person they loved. This motivation is still valid today. In the modern world too, people risk death for their loved ones, parents for their children, soldiers for their country, doctors for their patients sacrifice their lives. The motivation doesn't change, only the expression changes. Power of belief systems. The Sumerian example shows what belief systems can make people give up. This power can be both creative and destructive. What matters is how this power is directed. Social loyalty. While individualism is prominent in the modern world, the Sumerian example reminds us of the importance of social loyalty, but this loyalty should be conscious choice, not blind obedience. Overcoming fear of death. Sumerians saw death as the natural continuation of life. Modern humans' fear of death has lessons to learn from their approach. Psychological effect of rituals. Sumerian rituals show how powerful social rituals can be. Modern societies can also strengthen social bonds by developing effective rituals. Historical perspective. The Sumerian example shows that no era has absolute truth. Each age lives its own realities, and future generations will evaluate our era the same way. Continuity of human nature. Even after 5,000 years, humans' basic motivations don't change. Love, loyalty, search for meaning, hope for life after death. Sumerian rituals are the ancient expression of these universal needs. Final thoughts. The 77 people lying in Queen Puabi's tomb teach us this: humans aren't just individual beings but also social beings. Sometimes this social identity becomes so strong that it can even overshadow individual existence. This story might disturb us, shock us, but we can't deny it. Because this is part of human nature. And to the extent we understand this nature, we can better grasp both our past and our future. Thanks for listening to this long story. If you love these kinds of deep historical analyses, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Which ancient civilization do you want me to examine in the next video? I'm waiting for your suggestions in the comments. And please share this video with your history-loving friends, because understanding the past is the first step to shaping the future. We've solved this great mystery of Sumer, but many more mysteries await us. See you in the next video.